Time to talk all things Aston Villa with Dan Bardell. Dan, it's been some season, hasn't it? You think it's 14, 15 months ago that Steven Gerrard was your manager. You were fighting relegation. I remember it well. Defeat at Fulham on a Thursday night, wasn't it? He was sacked, and then fast forward 14 months. Not only did you stay in the Premier League, but you've got a real genuine chance now of finishing in the top four places. And of course, he got you into Europe last season, and you're still in the Europa Conference League. I asked you this question at the top of the show. I'll ask you it again now. Fourth in the table with 12 games to go. Has standards been raised that high that now it feels like finishing fourth is kind of almost what you're expecting? Anything below fourth now would end up feeling like a bit of an underwhelming season?
I don't think it would be underwhelming. I think it would be disappointing because once you get yourself into this position, you know, we're coming into March now, you can't help but dream of that Champions League music playing at Villa Park. And I've got to say, over the last 10, 15 years, something I probably never thought I'd see. Certainly 18 months ago, I didn't think I'd be sat here talking about Villa potentially qualifying for the Champions League. And I actually thought Villa would be in and around it this season. I didn't think we'd be the pace setters for fourth, but I actually had us fifth in my pre-season prediction. Wow. So I did think, just because of what Unai Emery did at the back end of last season, with that everyone spoke so highly of Brighton for the entirety of the season, Villa gave Brighton a 13-game head start and finished 1 point off them in the end. So that tells you the magnitude of what Unai Emery did. And, you know, there was a point up until Christmas where Villa were just churning result after result after result at Villa Park especially. They won 17 in a row at Villa Park, which has been unheard of in my time supporting the club. So he has just revolutionised Aston Villa Football Club. Every now and again, you'll get someone that comes in and just fits a club perfectly. The way Unai Emery's operated and the way Villa have built everything around him now, it feels very, very sustainable, what Villa are doing. And I would be disappointed if we didn't finish fourth naturally, but I think we'll do it. I think out of the three teams that are in the discussion, I think even with injuries, because of this manager, I think we're the best team.
Fair enough. And you mentioned their injuries. Maybe this doesn't get spoken about enough because they've been long-term injuries and haven't played for any of the season. But you think Buendia, Mings, long-term injuries, haven't kicked a ball. You now got Kamara out, don't you, for the rest of the season? These are big injuries to big players. Europe returns next week, this time next week, actually. 5:45 kickoff. You've got Ajax in the Conference League last 16. Do you expect, with not the biggest squad in the league, that he'll still go for that? Because I think Villa, I should have asked William Hill, but I'm fairly certain Villa are favourites to win that competition. Do you think it's sustainable in the final third of the season to go for top four and also go for the Europa Conference League and play your strongest squad 3 times a week?
I think the way you do it, and this is what Villa have done so far this season with the Conference League, is you've only changed 4 or 5 of your squad. He's used it to build squad players' minutes in the main. Now, look, the teams that Villa came up against in the group stage, they're teams that Villa should be, and they did actually make hard work of some of the ties, but it's something that they've managed well through the season. And Emery actually speaks that he thinks Villa are better when they go Thursday to Sunday. And if you're going to manage that load, even with Villa's squad size, I think the squad size is okay. I think we've just lost 3 big players, and if they were there, I don't think anyone would be talking about Villa's squad size. But you've got a manager in Unai Emery that just knows how to navigate these things. How many European trophies has he won in charge of clubs previously? So we've got the perfect manager to embark on this journey, and I think Villa can manage the load. I think recently the struggle that they've had whilst they haven't had European football is that the injuries have just built up. You know, Emery doesn't go on about it. It's not something he ever really speaks about in his press conferences like other managers. So I think it's almost flown underneath the radar. But to lose 2 players on day one for the entirety of the season, and they've had other injuries through the season as well. Jacob Ramsey's only just come back. You know, he's missed the majority of the season as well. In recent weeks, Conte has been out. Pau Torres was out for 2 months. He's the real big one, Pau Torres. I don't know whether, I don't know how much of Villa you see, but when Pau Torres plays, Villa are a completely different team. He is so good. One of the best progressors of a football I've ever seen. And genuinely, I can't tell you what a good footballer he is enough.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say, for me, I think... I mean, it's not a massive shout, but the one that always impresses me, Dan, when I watch Aston Villa is Douglas Luiz in midfield. I mean, I could see why he was linked. It was 18 months ago. He was heavily linked with Arsenal in a January transfer window, but it almost just feels like when he plays well, Villa play well. I think he's so good on the ball. He controls the game. You know, we've seen him adding goals to his game over the last couple of months. So I know Watkins scores the goals. There is a lot of creative players going forward, but I just think when so much good stuff Villa do, Dan, for me, comes through Douglas Luiz.
Yeah, an excellent footballer with a really high football IQ. He can do a bit of everything. He doesn't really have a weakness in his game in terms of being a central midfielder. He can tackle, he can pass, he can shoot, he takes set pieces. You know, he very rarely gives the ball away. If he's in a tight space, he can work his way out of there. You know, Brazil must have some pretty good players if Douglas Luiz can't get in that team, because honestly, he's so good. Probably an £80 million player now at this point. I would say maybe outside of the top three, you could argue. He's the best midfield player outside the top three now. He's taken his game to new levels this season. But like so many of the players at Villa Park, I think he owes it all to Unai Emery, because he's created the environment that has allowed these players to flourish. And I would say there's so many players at Villa that are playing to the maximum of their ability, the maximum of their potential. Whereas you put those players under a manager like Steven Gerrard, they were playing to the bottom level of their potential.
Best midfielder outside, that's a big shout, Dan, isn't it?
Yeah, but can you tell me someone who's better than him outside of those three?
Bruno Guimaraes?
I think he's better.
Yeah.
Look at his numbers. Look at his numbers this season. Double figures already for goals, gets assists. Like I say, doesn't really have a weakness to his game. I think, you know, Guimaraes is talked about as £100 million player.
Jeremy's just called Enzo Fernandez. You just slagged him off for the last hour, hasn't he?
He's definitely better than Enzo at the moment, definitely.
Is there, I don't want to turn negative on you here, Darren, but with Emery punching so far above where anyone thought Villa would be, if he comes top four, and hey, look, even wins the Conference League, is there any worry that you think he could be poached in the summer, that a bigger club than Aston Villa come in for him? Maybe abroad, maybe even domestically. I mean, you know, how would you feel if Manchester United, if, you know, the new regime's in place, and, you know, Dan Ashworth, whoever it might be, phones up Mr. Emery and says, look, I know we're miles off where Villa are right now, but we're Manchester United. We're the biggest club in the world. Things are going to change here, and we're going to give you absolutely everything you need to take Man United back to where we want to be. Is there any worry that, you know, long term he could be tempted away? Or in the short term even, sorry?
I mean, I'm going to do a reverse Rio Ferdinand here. If Manchester United comes calling, I think Unai Emery walks in the opposite direction. I don't think he even
really
takes the call. Absolutely no chance.
Just rejects the call for Mr. Ashworth.
I don't think there's any way in the world he leaves Aston Villa at this moment in time to go to Manchester United, in particular if he gets Villa into the Champions League, because that's what he speaks about and that's what the people around him speak about. He wants to be operating in the Champions League. And, you know, you forget he took a team like Villarreal to the semi-finals. They very nearly caused an upset and got to the Champions League final. He's been given everything he could ever want at Villa. Every staff member behind the scenes is someone that Unai Emery has brought in. You know, Villa do have a sporting director in Monchi, but very much Emery is the man making decisions on the football side of things. The club has been built in his name. Now he won't get that anywhere else, and I think he knows that as well. I always think, you know, we're talking about, I don't want to talk this up because I don't want it to happen, but talk about a manager for Liverpool. I can't believe that he doesn't get talked about being on the list, and De Zerbi does. I find that absolutely shocking and disrespectful.
Really? Do you think it's what, is it down maybe to the style of football? It's not as pleasing on the eye maybe as Brighton? I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
I think Villa play better football than Brighton. No. I think Villa play brilliant football. I think Arsenal, maybe that was something that could have been levelled at Emery, but from pretty much minute one, really, his first game in charge after a few days, Villa played Manchester United off the park. The brand of football that Villa play is very, very attractive. I love going to Villa Park and watching my team play. I don't know whether it's just stigmas that are attached to him, maybe from his time.
Or do you think maybe because he failed at Arsenal, maybe people think he's not, you know, he's not cut out for I'm not saying Villa on a big club, but you know what I mean, one of the top six, traditional top six.
Yeah, like I said, I don't want this to happen, but I think Liverpool as a football club and the way they are, I think it would actually suit him. I could see him going there and doing a really good job. But I don't think it'll happen because I don't think he's on the list. And I still don't think he'll leave Villa.
You're absolutely right, though. You think, given the great work he's done at Villa, I haven't even seen his name loosely being linked with Liverpool.
Now, Bayern Munich's one that's come up in recent weeks, isn't it? But I don't think they'd get him in. And again, as big a giant as Bayern Munich are, I could land flat on my face saying this here, but I don't think he'd go. I honestly think at this stage...
Would he go for Liverpool, do you think? You say no to Man United. What about if Liverpool come calling?
I do just think he'd say no. At the moment, I don't think he'd leave Villa. I don't think he'd leave Villa. I think what he's been given, and I do think that Villa will be in the Champions League next season. I don't think Unai Emery would walk away from that. I think he's got some loyalty about him, and I think he appreciates what Villa have done for him. They've been good for each other, haven't they? He's completely rebuilt his reputation in this country. I think there's a massive debt owed from the football club to Unai Emery, but I do think there's an element of debt owed by Unai Emery to the club as well.
Did you have doubts, honestly, Dan, when he came in, given that, he was sort of mocked at Arsenal, wasn't he? Probably quite unfairly, but did you think maybe he was treated unfairly?
Yeah, I think he was. I think, he's the one that gave Saka his debut, isn't he? He gave Saka his chance, and maybe some of the good work that Arteta has done, maybe the building blocks were put in place from Emery. At Arsenal, it just didn't come together on the pitch, and whoever followed Wenger, I think, was going to find it tough. Just like I think whoever follows Klopp, they're massive shoes to fill out, aren't they? Liverpool are going as good as they've ever gone under Klopp at the moment, but I just think there is stigmas around him still that are really, really unfair. I maybe was guilty of that myself when I first got wind that he was who Villa were targeting. I wasn't sure about it, but the more I read about him, the more I heard about him, and when I actually thought about the clubs that he'd been at where he'd done well, I did think it was a good match, and it's proved to be that so far.
There we go. Dan Bardell, good stuff. Heard it here first. talkSPORT 2 exclusive. Unai Emery to Liverpool, eh?
No, he turns it down.
I'm joking. Yeah, of course he does. It's only Liverpool, isn't it? Aston Villa at Luton this weekend. That's the 5:30 kickoff, and then the next league game for Villa after that. After the conference game at Ajax, massive game, home to Tottenham. That's on the 10th of March. This is talkSPORT 2. It's the social. We're with William Hill. You can get epic value all season with William Hill. It's 18+. BeGambleAware.org. Coming up next, we'll switch gears and we're going to talk all things Formula One. It's back this weekend. It's
on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.